Tombstone didn't play it safe, not in spirit, not in style, and certainly not behind the scenes. From the moment production began, the film bled grit, gun smoke, exhaustion, and near chaos, mirroring the violent world it was trying to capture. Though the movie officially credited a director, the reality on set told a different story. Scripts were being rewritten in the middle of filming, actors were unsure which version of scenes they were playing, and the tone of the movie shifted from day to day. As the project threatened to spiral apart, Kurt Russell quietly stepped into a leadership role. Not out of ego or ambition, but necessity. He met with the studio, reorganized shooting schedules, helped determine which scenes stayed and which were cut, and guided the emotional direction of the story. George P. Cosmatos was brought in as the official director, yet even he later acknowledged that Russell was steering the ship. Russell never took public credit, but without his intervention, Tombstone may never have survived production, let alone become a classic. The shoot itself was brutal. Filming in the Arizona desert meant relentless heat, thick wool costumes accurate to the 1880s but unbearable under the sun, and long days that often began before sunrise and stretched past midnight. Guns were real, schedules were erratic, and exhaustion was constant. Cast and crew fell ill. Some collapsed. Sleep became optional. Michael Biehn later described the experience as military boot camp with cameras, while Sam Elliott called it the hardest shoot of his career. The toughness audiences see on screen wasn't acting, it was survival. The film's rawness was earned the hard way. Casting choices could have changed the film entirely. Before Val Kilmer ever slipped into Doc Holliday's coat, Willem Dafoe was briefly considered for the role. He had the intensity, the edge, and the unpredictability, but the studio feared his controversial past roles might bring unwanted attention. The offer never came, and Kilmer stepped in instead, delivering a performance so definitive it erased any alternate reality. His Doc Holliday became immortal, witty, haunted, defiant, and slowly dying. Kilmer committed completely, never breaking character on or off set. He altered his walk, slurred his speech, hunched his posture, and isolated himself between takes. He studied tuberculosis through 19th-century medical journals, practiced delivering lines while holding his breath, and treated the role not as a gunslinger, but as a man fading toward death. What emerged wasn't a performance, it was a transformation. Kurt Russell, too, had to fight for his role. He wasn't the studio's first choice, or even their second. Executives wanted a safer, more traditional leading man. Russell saw Wyatt Earp differently, not as a clean-cut hero, but as a man full of contradictions, grief, rage, and restraint. Even after being cast, he faced scrutiny over his look, his tone, and his mustache. He didn't win the role by fitting expectations. He won it by refusing to play it safe. Before becoming a cult classic, Tombstone nearly died in development. Screenwriter Kevin Jarre's script was repeatedly rejected for being too long, too serious, and too crowded with characters. Studios believed the Western genre was dead. For a time, the project was shelved entirely. Jarre refused to let it go, revising and pitching until independent financing finally moved the film forward under tight budgets and constant scrutiny. Ironically, once the movie succeeded, some of the same studios that passed on it tried to reclaim distribution rights, but by then, Tombstone had already proven its worth. Even the ending wasn't secure. Early cuts left Wyatt Earp walking away alone, with no farewell to Doc Holliday and no emotional resolution. Test audiences felt disconnected, as if the story simply stopped. In a rare and costly decision, the studio approved late-stage rewrites and reshoots, adding the hospital goodbye and the snowy epilogue with Josephine. Those scenes weren't in the original script, but they gave the film its grace, its closure, and its lasting emotional weight. Some of the film's most iconic moments nearly broke the production. The OK Corral shootout took days to film, with countless camera setups, explosions, live gunfire, and precise timing. Actors were bruised, props destroyed, and crew members eventually stopped watching monitors altogether. Meanwhile, the quiet duel between Doc Holliday and Johnny Ringo pushed Michael Biehn to the edge of collapse. Dehydrated and wearing heavy black wool under the desert sun, he nearly fainted during filming. The distant, dazed look audiences remember wasn't acting, it was real exhaustion captured on camera. Not everyone welcomed the film. Residents and historians in the real Tombstone, Arizona, criticized the script as inaccurate and overly violent. Letters were sent. Locations were challenged. Tensions ran high. The message was clear: this legend belonged to history long before Hollywood. Yet despite resistance, setbacks, and near failure in post-production, where editors described the process as stitching a wounded film back to life, Tombstone emerged with a pulse. When released alongside Kevin Costner's heavily backed Wyatt Earp, expectations favored the prestige biopic. Instead, audiences connected with Tombstone. Its dialogue became iconic. Its performances endured. Its soul resonated. The film that struggled for every frame outlived the one that had everything planned. And in the end, the final truth echoed the real Doc Holliday's last words, spoken not with drama, but irony. Looking at his bare feet as he died of tuberculosis, he smiled and said, "This is funny," amused that a man who expected to die with his boots on never did. Like Doc, Tombstone cheated the odds, surviving long enough to become more than a movie. It became a memory that still lingers long after the dust has settled.